Well, hello there and welcome to the Richie Allen television show, brought to you in association with davidike.com and beyondvision.tv. It's been a while. It's been quite a while, but I'm thrilled to be back with you. Looking back over the week, the big news stories and the big talking points in the week's news for the week ending Friday, September 23rd. Now, one of the reasons we've been away for a few weeks, even though I had a couple of weeks off, is tragically Beyond Vision TV, the studios here at Cheetham Hill in Manchester, well, they were broken into. So I'm going to bring in straight away my friend and colleague Hayden Hewitt, who it's great to see you again, by the way.
Good to see you, sir.
Thrilled to see you. What happened? Because I was telling the radio listeners that there'd been a break-in. Fill us in on what actually happened.
Essentially, a group of scroats came in through the ceiling. They weren't looking for the studio. They didn't know this was here. They ransacked a load of the other offices, a couple of other businesses that are here, and then found their way into the studio. And it must have been like Christmas, so they emptied us out of everything expensive. But they clearly didn't know what was here because they were taking some items that had lesser value than others, but the other ones might not be that obvious, like certain tripods.
Opportunists.
Very much so. So it cleaned us out, and it took us a while to get set back up with everything and get back up and running, which we are now. So that's good.
A charity. I mean, this is a charity, and I tell people on the radio regularly what it's designed to do. It's ultimately designed, BVTV, to give people whom would never be afforded the opportunity to make television programmes, to give them a chance to do it. The voiceless. Now, of course, the gurriers, as we would call them in Ireland, the scallies, of course they didn't know that, but it pisses you off, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because they made us.
You have to make an insurance claim.
We have to do claims, but you still got to replace in the meantime because it never pays out that quick. And we had to get back up and running. We've already had one new show start this week. Things are really starting to move now after a long period of trying to get them moving. And they also took personal items, like a camera of mine that was from a certain time in my life, and it's got pictures of my kid on. And yeah, but these things happen. What can you do? You just got to dust yourself down and crack on with it. Yeah, well, what are the options? Quit, give up. So as a result of that, reshuffled quite a few things in my life, so I can put a lot more energy into making sure this really does take off in the next 12 to 18 months and achieves at least what we initially set out for it to do, with a couple of new wrinkles.
Delighted, mate. Delighted to be back. Delighted to be associated with this project. And I recommend you go to beyondvision.tv to find out more about it. Now, coming up a little bit later on, we're going to talk about transhumanism and what that actually means, the dictionary definition of it, what those who are proponents of it believe it to be, and what the naysayers, including me, believe it to be. We'll talk about that a bit later on. We're obviously going to talk about the week's events in Syria, and we will talk about the bombs in New York and New Jersey last week as well. First of all, though, we're just going to take a quick look at a couple of stories in the news today here in the UK. When we record this, it's mid-morning on Friday. So all manner of catastrophes might happen later on in the day, and you might think, why did they miss that? We record this in the AM on Fridays. Well, Article 50 and leaving the European Union. You will know by now that on June 23rd this year, the British public spoke, and 52% of them voted that Britain should indeed, the United Kingdom I should say, should leave the European Union. There's been a lot of coverage of the fallout from this in recent weeks. It's been 2 months, in fact, since the vote. It is, isn't it? Because it's 23rd today, so 23rd of June, 23rd of August, that's 2 months. August, September, 3 months. September 23rd today, what's wrong with me? So 3 months then since the vote. Before the vote, we were warned of all manner of economic catastrophes that would come about in the very short term should Britain or should the United Kingdom choose to leave. None of that has transpired. However, today, Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, there he is on screen, has predicted that formal negotiations will begin in early 2017. That's only a few months away. Still subject for discussion, he said, but the Article 50 letter would be produced probably in the early part of 2017. But number 10 and the Prime Minister Theresa May said the government's position hadn't changed and Article 50 would not be triggered in 2016. Well, that goes along with what Johnson is saying. Thanks for that, Hayden. Now, one of the predictions made not only on this television programme but on our radio show, and I know that Hayden Hewitt himself has talked about this on his Live League show, was that no matter whether or not the UK populace decided to leave the European Union, that the establishment, the authorities, the powers that be, whatever you want to call them, wouldn't stand for it, and that ultimately it wouldn't happen. Here's a really interesting bit of video. It's not recent. This was on Sky News about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we were off. A guy called Jean-Claude Perry. He's a constitutional lawyer. He was responsible for drafting Article 50 when the Lisbon Treaty was put before the peoples of Europe. Let's have a look at what Jean-Claude Perry says.
Nobody thought that it would be used, but people were thinking if it is used one day, it will probably be by the United Kingdom. Because as you know, the United Kingdom has always been a little bit in, a little bit out.
So a surprise to him, but how about this for a surprise to others? It's Mr Pyrrhus's legal opinion that even after triggering Article 50, it can be revoked.
My opinion is that there's no legal provision in Article 50 providing that when you give your intention, you cannot change your intention. So I think it's possible legally.
You see, if our government here in the United Kingdom has anything to do with it, and that be a Conservative government or a Conservative Lib Dem coalition government or a Labour Lib Dem or a Labour Scottish National Party coalition government, whichever government is here, they are not going to trigger Article 50 in order for Britain to leave the European Union. They're not going to do it. And even if they do it, some stage down the line, as we predicted on this programme, they're going to say, well, there's been 8 months or a year, water under the bridge. We believe at this point that the mood has changed in the country and that the electorate's opinion has possibly changed. Ergo, we need another referendum. You heard the guy say it there. Even triggering Article 50 isn't the death knell for Britain's membership of the European Union. I'm going to leave that there. It's our contention, I think I can say that safely on this programme, it's our contention that this is all smoke and mirrors. There is no intention on the part of these people for Britain to sever its ties with the European Union. None whatsoever. And what we are going to see in 2017 is we are going to see a massive movement through the British broadsheet press, through the Labour Party, through the Conservative Party, through the Liberal Democrats, to say everything has changed now. People are seeing that they didn't get what they were promised if they left the European Union, therefore their opinion has changed, got to have another referendum. We saw it in Ireland, didn't we? And we're going to see it here. That's our prediction. Another massive story today, and I know Hayden's going to have an opinion on this. Yahoo has been saying that state-sponsored hackers stole information from about 500 million users. That's massive. If it's 6.5-7 billion people on the planet, that's a massive number. State-sponsored hackers stole from 500 million users information in what appears to be the largest publicly disclosed cyber breach in history. What it included was swathes of personal information, including names and emails, as well as unencrypted security questions and answers. This took place apparently in 2014, but has only now been made public. The FBI has said it's investigating the claims. The data taken includes email addresses, phone numbers, dates of birth, and encrypted passwords, but importantly, not credit card data. says Yahoo. The company said the information was stolen by what we believe is a state-sponsored actor, but they didn't say which country is held responsible. But I'm going to give a guess. For 50 points, Aidan, it's got to be Russia. And if it's not Russia, it's North Korea. And if it's not them, it's got to be China.
It's China.
Right. You've got to have an opinion on this. 2 years after this happened, it's brought out at a time when relations, or the relationship between the United States of America and Russia is at its lowest ebb. Those bastard Russians, they're doping all of their athletes. Those bastard Russians, they're propping up even the evil Assad regime. What else can they be doing? All right, they're hacking. They're hacking millions of people's personal data.
It was probably China.
They're going to blame Russia, though.
But it was probably China.
Maybe it didn't happen at all.
It's usually China.
The Chinese like a good hack.
It's usually China.
And we're
This
not talking
goes on
about
all
the
time.
equestrian kind.
Let's be
They like a
honest.
good hack, right?
We're all at it.
Everybody is at it,
We're all
right?
at it. So whoever we hack is because we're the good guys. Whoever they hack is because they're bad guys. This is the way espionage works. This is the way government works. We know it goes on all the time. What's fascinating here is that this happened. This was probably the largest data breach in history. It
Well,
happened.
500 million, I mean, as a percentage of the global population,
It's quite hefty.
it's
And also,
12, 14%, something like that.
the saying it's okay because there was no credit card information given away, but most people use the same security question on virtually every site they ever use.
For everything.
So it can't be that much of a stretch to think your information is going to be freely available
Yeah.
at some point. And it's Marissa Mayer, is it? The woman in charge of Yahoo. I think it's Marissa Mayer. She's overseen some bad business choices. And now this, and she's still in a job. Verizon, the wonderful, wonderful telecoms giant from America, is buying Yahoo.
That's right.
Because Yahoo have been wanting to find a sugar daddy for quite some time because they're not doing so great.
Do you want to have a good rant about anti-competitive practices in the United States and everywhere else?
I think-
Because it's an absolute disgrace to allow that merger, isn't it?
Of course it is, but it doesn't.
Disgusting,
It's
huh?
going to happen. But amusingly, Verizon have released a statement going, "We were only told 2 days ago about this
Wow.
hack." Now that's pretty big. That's not. Do you know
That
what?
should mean that executives at Yahoo should go to prison.
Yeah, well,
We're
it's-
selling you a company, and we're not telling you. I'm hiding behind the screen there, by the way. Behind the telly. We're selling you a company, and we're not going to tell you that there was a major data breach 2 years ago, which might reduce customer trust in confidence, I should say,
when
in
you
our
say
products.
reduce, you mean destroy.
Destroy.
Completely. I mean, it's not like, you know what, we left the milk out the fridge last night. I am sorry, Verizon. You know, oh yeah, we didn't lock the back door.
The levels of filth and sleaze. Hey?
It's corporate thinking, isn't it? Yahoo are doing badly. If we release this news now, we are screwed.
Hey, listen, just before we move on, speaking of hacking and all of that, and leaks, isn't it wonderful that all those Russian athletes who were found to be using things that were on the banned list, and then the Russian hacking company does a little bit of digging and finds out that US and UK athletes were taking the same stuff, but it's okay because their doctor said it was fine.
Yeah, quite right. More gold.
I have no time
Go team.
for billionaire oligarchs anywhere in the world. I have no time for politicians, whether they are Russian or whether they are not, whether they are British, whether they are American. If people can't see what's going on, the full-scale media-supported demonization of Russia to suit another agenda, it's absolutely staggering. We're going to get into it more in a minute.
Well, you're just a communist, sir.
That's all I am.
You're a Zionist communist.
Yeah, Joseph McCarthy over there. Let's move on. Before we move on, let's lovely full shot of you there. I enjoyed that. Before we move on, David Icke is in San Francisco this weekend. I think it's the Craneway Pavilion. It's actually tomorrow. There's a list. If you want to put that on full screen, Hayden, if you want it for a minute, buddy. There's a list of where David is going to be. So he's in San Francisco tomorrow. Marvellous that. There are still a few tickets available. Go to theworldwidewakeup.com. And then he's very quickly into Europe, in Prague, in Rimini, in Bucharest, in Tallinn and in Amsterdam before he arrives in Manchester in January of next year. Check out the Worldwide Wake Up Tour. It's basically a 12-hour presentation. You'll never see anything like it again, as long as you live. And I recommend you go and see it, particularly if you think he's wrong or there's something wrong with him. Great stuff. Go and see David if you can. We're going to pitch a new show to NBC in America called America's Dumbest Terrorists, and a sister show to accompany that called America's Dumbest Cops. Last weekend, you'll know by now, a pressure cooker bomb exploded in New York City and 29 people were injured. Other devices were found in New Jersey, and those blew up when somebody was attempting to defuse them. I think they normally use a robot to do that. Ahmad Khan Rahami is the guy who allegedly did it. He's the guy in custody at the moment. We might have a picture of him there shortly after he was arrested. That's him. Well, who is he? Well, he's a US citizen born in Afghanistan back in 1988, and according to the Daily Beast, came to the US as a child in 1995 as the son of an asylum seeker. The FBI described him as a naturalised US citizen. His last known address was in Elizabeth in New Jersey. He was known as a class clown in high school, according to his high school sweetheart and the mother of his daughter. Her name is Maria, and she told Fox News on Monday that he often criticised American culture and the American military, but she never thought he would do something like this. Apparently he became a different person after a trip to Afghanistan 4 years ago. He visited Afghanistan and eventually Pakistan. Apparently he changed drastically when he came home. He started wearing a beard, wearing traditional Muslim clothing and praying at work, taking out the prayer mat and praying 5 times a day. He became noticeably more serious. It's like he was a completely different person, according to Flea Jones, who grew up with Rahami. Flea Jones spoke with the New York Times. He got serious and he completely closed off. That's what the authorities are saying about him. The customers of the family chicken restaurant are saying otherwise. Have a look.
Okay, are you surprised to hear?
I'm surprised and terrified at the same time. I would have never suspected this from him.
Please believe he's the guy who's literally been terrorizing people in this area with pipe bombs.
It's insane. It's scary.
What can you tell us about your interaction with him?
He's a very friendly guy. He gives me a free check-in here and there. All he talked about was his cars, how he liked to fast on the Civics.
Any idea that he might have been radicalized? You ever make any comments about it?
None at all. None.
Yeah. How long has he been there for?
I'd say at least 15 years. Well, his father. Him, I'm not sure, but his father's owned that for like 15 years.
Now, we could have played several clips with other members of the community saying the same thing. Basically, he was a nice guy, really nice. He gave stuff away to people. If people couldn't pay for their food, he looked after them. Gregarious guy. Lots of clips like that out there. Different people plucked out by NBC, CNN, the usual suspects. Now, post-September the 11th, you might remember, you might not remember, the news media was telling us, and they were doing it by dragging out all manner of officials from the State Department, from the Pentagon, from the government, senators, congressmen and women, to tell us that the real terror was in sleeper cells. People whom you couldn't possibly know anything about. People living in your communities. People whom were not known to be involved in anything. People whom the authorities, in inverted commas, didn't know anything about. Terrifying, right? You can't see them. No intelligence can be gathered on them. It's dreadful. It's the biggest threat ever, right? I'm overdoing it, but that's what they were saying at the time. But over the last few years in particular, a common feature of the stories we've just heard, you know, the guy didn't fit the bill, friends don't believe it, and he was actually known to the authorities. Have a look.
Hi, Jenna. Well, all of this is leading to the question of whether or not this could have been prevented. The FBI began its investigation into Ahmad Khan Rahami in 2014 when his father alerted the FBI that he was hanging around bad people and alluded that he could be radicalized. The dad said he contacted the FBI after his son hit his mother and stabbed a brother. Listen.
You talk to the FBI and tell them that your son was involved in terrorism.
And did you later retract that?
You told that to the FBI. You called them and told them. Yes. And what did they say?
They're not doing the job.
The FBI says they did do their job. They interviewed Rahami's father multiple times and others, but the father ended up recanting his initial concerns. The FBI never interviewed Rahami because he was incarcerated at the time. Now,
Yes, on the one hand, the family and friends, no way, the guy is lovely, he would never be involved in anything like that. On the other hand, the FBI saying, well, we knew him, he was on a watch list, he went to Afghanistan, he came back, he was involved in a stabbing incident. The FBI never interviewed him, despite what his father said. And what's even more incredible about this story, and we've gotten into this in the radio show this week, in the absence of any real media, you see, we don't like doing this pisses me off. Having come from the mainstream media, we shouldn't have to do this to our small audiences compared to the audiences enjoyed by the major players, asking the questions they won't ask. He left a note in one of the bags containing one of the bombs, praising the Boston Marathon bombing. Jesus Christ. Do you think for a minute that when the bomb went off, the note might have been destroyed? Why would you do that? And then when he was arrested, he was asleep in the doorway of a pub. The landlord wakes him up, Hayden, and he apologises to the landlord. Oh, Jesus, man, I'm sorry. Been a busy night, you know, I've been placing bombs all over the place. The landlord then recognised him through the window of a shop across the street, which apparently had TVs playing. He called the cops. The cops came along. Rahami pulled a gun and he was shot in the arm and the leg, but he lived. Now, these would be the only cops, my friend.
I'm just thinking this.
Listen to this, just before you jump in there. These must be the only motherfucking cops in America who failed to kill a guy who pulled a gun on them. Shot him in the arm and in the leg, but didn't kill him.
Now I'm confused.
This stinks to high heaven,
I'm very
right?
confused here because...
And you're the resident skeptic.
Recently, I've seen someone allegedly shot for holding a book. And a man shot dead for not complying. By which I don't mean he reached for a gun. I mean he turned around and walked slowly away from the police. Everyone thought he was going to get tased, which is, I imagine, the usual state of affairs for these things. But they shot him.
Yeah.
And yet, a man suspected of placing bombs, of being an extremist, a terrorist, was somehow shot by a marksman.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to shoot people in the arm and leg on purpose.
No.
So I can only assume they weren't aiming for his arm and leg, but somehow managed to not empty the complete magazine into him, which seems to be the usual way of dealing with these things, or at least two in the head for any kind of terrorist suspect, because you don't want them to explode. So yeah, as the resident skeptic, I do find this a little odd, I'm not going to lie.
It's more than a little odd. Thanks for that. I call bullshit. Hayden has been a little bit more eloquent than me. I cry bullshit because all of this happened just after this story here from the good old Irish Times, be Jesus. Magically delicious. Where's that potato here? The Irish Times, that's another whole show, that. Yeah. The United States said that they accidentally killed nearly 70 Syrian troops. There's the story there. We're going to talk more about it in a minute. This came shortly after the whole sequence of events with Khan Rahami. So we say there are no such thing as coincidences. And in the absence of any media at all in this country, in this world, we're left asking the questions. Now, yesterday, RT and the BBC were granted an audience with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. And they asked him if he accepted the Americans' contention that the bombing of Syrian troops, Syrian government forces, was in fact an accident.
The explanation?
No, it's not, because it wasn't accident by one airplane for once, let's say. It was 4 airplanes that kept attacking the position of the Syrian troops for nearly 1 hour, or a little bit more than 1 hour. You don't commit a mistake for more than 1 hour. This first. Second, they weren't attacking a building in a quartier. They were attacking a huge place constituted of many hills, and there was no terrorist adjacent to the Syrian troops there. At the same time, the ISIS troops or the ISIS militants attacked right away after the American strike. How could they know that the Americans are going to attack that position in order to gather the militants to attack right away and to capture it 1 hour after the strike? So it was definitely intentional, not unintentional, as they claimed.
Bashar al-Assad there. Late on Monday this week, the US State Department said they were outraged at an attack on a UN aid convoy. 2 Russian aircraft attacked an aid convoy near Aleppo, they said, and killed lots of people. This is tragic. The trucks were marked clearly UN, and it's taking aid to people who need it. The Russians are bastards. We've heard this one before. What's interesting here is that Russia had previously, in the days before that, blamed the United States for over 200 violations of a week-long ceasefire which had been brokered by Sergei Lavrov and John Kerry. Now I ask you this, even if you are amongst Russia's most vociferous detractors, if you hate that country, if you despise Vladimir Putin, why in the name of Jesus would Russia attack an aid convoy of UN trucks? What could they possibly gain from that? It cannot be credible. Whatever you think of them and what they do, they're not stupid, right? Even if they're the most evil people in the world. Now, the Russians had a drone in the area. They said the convoy was travelling with a truck, which clearly had a mortar on it. Why? Asked the Russians. Now, to me, as a layman, that picture doesn't mean anything, right? But experts, not just on RT and Press TV, to be fair, but on other media outlets have said, yes, there is a mortar travelling with that convoy. Why would that be the case? It's a good question, isn't it? John Kerry, of course, the US Secretary of State, he doesn't give a shit. Do you know what he wants to do? He wants to enforce a no-fly zone in Syria. I think we can hear from him now.
This attack has dealt a very heavy blow to our efforts to bring peace to Syria, and it raises a profound doubt about whether Russia and the Assad regime can or will live up to the obligations that they agreed to in Geneva.
A no-fly zone, John. Great idea. That worked out really well in Libya, didn't it? Shoot down government planes while you carpet bomb what's left of Syria into oblivion. Chasing Saudi Wahhabi nutcases that you created to begin with, that are putting videos out. I talked about this with Hayden Hewitt earlier on, of men being hacked to pieces in slaughterhouse type situations. These Saudi Wahhabi lunatics that you armed and funded. You're going to go and bomb them now and lay waste to Libya and to Syria and leave it like Libya, which is now, I think even my sceptical friend Hayden Hewitt wouldn't argue with me, Libya today is a Mad Max type post-apocalyptic nightmare. That's what it is. It's what it was designed to be. Now, people in this arena, in this so-called independent media arena, have been saying for years that this was always planned. You might remember this guy, Wesley Clark. Have a look.
So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off.
Decorated General, graduate of Oxford University here. He got the Rhodes Scholarship, unimpeachable. Nobody's ever disputed this. We've invited him on radio programmes, TV programmes in London. He's declined, which I respect. I suppose he doesn't want to be tainted by association with the independent media and conspiracy theories. It was always planned. He named the countries there. Genocide across the world carried out by NATO, carried out by the US, UK, Saudi Arabia and Israel predominantly. I don't mean Israel predominantly, I mean those countries predominantly. And your media sells it to you each time, rolling out a boogeyman, Saddam, Gaddafi, Assad, killing his own people and gassing them. What your media doesn't tell you is that before the no-fly zone in Libya, which led to hundreds of thousands of deaths and the post-apocalyptic scenario which I just described, Nicolas Sarkozy, sorry for doing this, Ed, and I should have given you some images and some stories. Sarkozy, who's going to run for the French presidency again, was funded in his run to the French presidency in 2007 by Muammar Gaddafi to the tune of €50 million. Who had most to gain, do you think, in Gaddafi disappearing in Libya? Who had more to gain than Nicolas Sarkozy? Something we've gotten into in the radio show this week. And remember, France led the stampede to creating the no-fly zone and to NATO bombing Libya. France led it. Just behind them was David Cameron. The media doesn't tell you that either. Sarkozy's been talking about burkinis this week. Going to ban the fucking burkini when I get back into power. Guy's a criminal. Should be in prison for the rest of his life. The Libyan people have asked for the money back numerous times. Give us back the 50 million we loaned you, you bastard. All these boogeymen killing their own people. Proof is never offered because there never is anyway. They quote impressive sounding organisations like the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. That sounds impressive, that. Do you know who the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights is? Drum roll. It's a t-shirt seller in Coventry. That's who he is. His name is Rami Abdul Rahman. Every story this week, every story last week quotes him. Do you know who he really is? He's a guy that was in jail twice in Syria for fraud. Now he's the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. That's your media. T-shirt salesman in Coventry. He says Assad's army is gassing people. Must be true then. You know, I wish I was joking. I really wish I was joking, but this is the reality of our media. This is what you are dealing with on a daily basis. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk Microsoft curing cancer by injecting millions of nanocomputers into you. What could possibly go wrong there? And a bit of Mark Zuckerberg and a bit more besides. After these, back in a minute.
Attention small business owner, when is a box more than just a box? No! Oh no, that's just weird. A box is more than just a box when it can give you a couple of extra hours in bed, or at the very least some time to do something more fun and or productive than bookkeeping. Just bang all your paperwork in a box and we'll take care of the rest. Accounts Direct. Accountants on your side.
And you're welcome back to the Richie Allen Show, brought to you in association with DavidIke.com and BVTV for Friday, September 23rd. Great to be with you. Thanks for choosing this. And please do spread it around on your own social media pages. I want to give a big shout out to LiveLeak.com and the Live Leak Show. It's back on Thursdays at 10 p.m. BST. It's a wonderful show presented by Hayden Hewitt and a cast of thousands. There's nothing like it. Check out that at liveleak.com. Check out davidike.com and the Worldwide Wake Up Tour, which is in San Francisco tomorrow at Craneway Pavilion, but soon moves to Europe, where it's going to be all over Central Europe, and it's in Manchester in early 2017. Thanks again for that, Hayden, the Worldwide Wake Up Tour. And I want to give a shout out to two big supporters of the independent media, and they haven't asked for this, but we're doing it because they're worthwhile. First of all, dataclinic.co.uk, which is managed and run by Chris Seeley. It's a Northwest-based company which recovers data from any device which stores it electronically. Any device, phones, tablets, computers, whatever. These guys are amazing. Check them out. And I want to give a big shout out to my friend Kim Hutchison from livingasyoursoul.com. Wonderful woman. She presents meditations on our shows, after our radio shows, every Monday on the Richie Allen Show. Check out livingasyoursoul.com. Thanks for that, Hayden. Right, I'm not forgetting anything. We can move on now, can't we?
Yeah.
We move on. Right. Transhumanism is an international and intellectual movement that aims to transform the human condition by developing and making widely available sophisticated technologies to greatly enhance human intellectual, physical and psychological capacities. Sounds all right, doesn't it? No, it doesn't. There's an agenda being spoken about for many years by people like the aforementioned David Icke. The ultimate agenda, the one planned from the beginning, to merge people and technology and to ultimately end humanity as we know it. I recommend Phantom Self, and if you're on the if you're scheduled to see David on the Worldwide Wake Up Tour, where this is explained using their own documents against them as testimony in a way that proves it and in a way that is irrefutable. Yes, I say irrefutable. Fuse us with technology through implanting it into the body. This is the next wave. We've already seen the first wave, which is merging us with external technology. They've made us addicted to this. We can't walk, talk, think, write, rest or sleep without this thing. Look at the children, look at teenagers, look at 20-somethings. They can't move, they can't exist without it. Now it's implantables. CNN News last week doing this. We couldn't get the clip. CNN covering this. Implantables. Virtual reality, Google glasses, microchipping, embeddable implants are all the rage, and this generation's kids love it. They have been conditioned to love it, right? Two stories this week. First of all, have a look at this from Manila Chan. What a lovely name. Manila Chan on RT.
Computer and tech giant Microsoft believes their new technology will help solve cancer in the next 10 years. Yes, solve cancer. They plan on treating cancer the same way they treat a virus that has invaded your computer. Scientists at Microsoft say they're working on a sort of nanotechnology that would be able to identify the cancerous cells individually and put a stop to their growth, actually reprogram that rogue cell from within the human body. Dr. David Heckerman, Senior Director of the Genomics Group at Microsoft, says, "We're in a revolution with respect to cancer treatment. Even 10 years ago, people thought that you treat the tissue. You have brain cancer, you get brain cancer treatment. You have lung cancer, you get lung cancer treatment. Now we know it's just as, if not more important, to treat the genomics of cancer, which genes have gone bad in the genome." Researchers at Microsoft say that doctors and scientists are at a stage in history where we have more information than is humanly possible to process when it comes to cancer. So they're working on a cloud computing system along with other programs that will help design precision treatment for individual people. They believe that their technology will be able to process the massive amounts of data available, pair it with individual patients' prognosis, and be able to develop more accurate models on how to treat the problem and essentially reprogram those cancerous cells.
Manila Chan there on RT. Don't believe them though about curing cancer in a few years' time. They can't even get Windows 10 to work. Apparently, this story from the BBC this week, which is a consumer affairs magazine, which is free. It's very good. Is Which, a very good magazine, and they're saying, well, they've condemned, haven't they, Hayden? They've condemned Windows 10 software for all the bugs and all the problems, which have actually suggested, my friend, that they start compensating people. It's been such a nightmare for people, they've actually suggested they start giving people money.
I'm going to be honest. Whilst I'm willing to accept transhumanism, and I see a lot of great positives to transhumanism, including some insane sci-fi fantasy things, the idea of Microsoft putting anything in my body is terrifying.
Thousands of nanocomputers.
What happens if you get a blue screen of death for real? You know, what happens if you have to go to Microsoft support because you've just lost bowel function?
You've made an argument to me in the past that is a credible one. Yes, if we can help somebody walk again by stimulating cells in their spine, if we can do that, if we can do it in such a way that that's just the end of it, a prosthetic leg, but we can improve on that and we can make it a more functioning leg. It's very hard to argue against that, and this is the way they sell it. But it's far, far deeper than that.
Can I just jump in one thing? I know
Jump
it's
in.
Deviating a little. You know the repairing spinal columns?
Yeah.
Some scientists working on dogs and mice have managed it now. Not using nanotechnology, new way of fusing nerves back together, severed nerves back together.
Now, who could argue with that?
Has
the fusing of severed nerves.
Well, we're going to do the media later, but can you imagine that some scientists said, "Oh, I think we can cure paralysis," and everyone's gone, "Yeah, great, whatever." Unreal. But I'd let tiny robots do it as well, mate. I'm being honest with you.
We, thanks for that. We are to be fused with technology so that we can ultimately be controlled by artificial intelligence. That just isn't David Icke on his own, by the way, although he's been writing that in his books for 20 years. That's also Stephen Hawking and many others. Many other academic men and women. If you don't believe me, Google it. I'm not going to read out a list of them. There are too many. It's not science fiction. It's not wild conspiracy theory. It's a fact. You are finished. Your sovereignty is gone the minute that you have smart technology implanted in your body. And on the same day Microsoft said they'd cure cancer, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg said he was pledging $3 billion to fight disease. And I think we have a clip.
When Max was born, we wrote this letter describing the hope that she gave us for the future. And I know that that's a hope that so many of us here share, that we can make a better future for our children and for generations to come. Priscilla's a doctor. I'm an engineer. And I think that that hope is part of the engineering mindset. Right? It's this belief that you can take any system, no matter how complex, and make it much, much better than it is today. Whether it's code, hardware, biology, a company, an education system, a government, anything. You can make anything much, much better than it is today. It's going to take years before the first tools get built, and then years after that before they're actually used to cure diseases. So we have to be patient. This is hard stuff, but it's important. And you know, I think that this is about the future that we all want for our children, right? Because if there's even a chance that we can help to cure all diseases in our children's lifetime, that our children or even their children can live happier, healthier lives, then we're going to do our part. And together, we all have an opportunity to leave the world a much better place than we found it.
Smart technology, smartphone, smart TV, smart car, smart meters, so on, so on, so on, so on. Creating a grid, a smart grid, which ultimately we're going to be connected to. Again, David Icke years ago, today, scientific journals talking about it today. You need only think out loud. Think out loud, you need only think to yourself, not out loud. I need a recipe for a cake. I need a recipe for this. I need a manual to show me how to figure out doing what I need to do to my car. And it'll come to you. It's being designed to merge with our consciousness through the implants that we've mentioned already. You know what the tragedy about this is? In Western media, there is no opposition to it whatsoever. As I mentioned, academic men and women all over the world horrified by the pace and the scale of it, and the lack of any debate about the morality of it. These people say we will cease to be human and we will become an artifact. Let me quote you Francis Fukuyama, famous political economist and philosopher. He has said, and I quote, "Transhumanism is the world's most dangerous idea because he believes that it may undermine the egalitarian ideals of democracy and liberal democracy through a fundamental alteration of human nature." I'm going to say that again because I fucked it up. Transhumanism is the world's most dangerous idea because it may undermine the egalitarian ideals of democracy and liberal democracy through a fundamental alteration of human nature. Now, if you're lucky enough to go and see David Icke on the Worldwide Wake Up Tour, he spent several hours on what's really behind all of this and the forces behind it. I urge you to get Phantom Self out of the library, to get the Perception Deception and read it and make your own mind up. But while reading it, look at what has been published in the last 2 years alone in the scientific journals about the nature of reality and the holographic universe and the digital universal construct. Have a look at that. We're nearly out of time.
Richie, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
It's just on transhumanism, just in case there are any people doubting the veracity of the claims about how huge the effect on humanity would be. Without using implants, this irrefutable fact that Google has changed the brains of people who use it actively in the Western world. It's changed our short-term memory.
Thank Christ you brought
the way
that
we
up.
ask questions.
Absolutely.
This is simply a browser on your computer or your... My phone's away in my pocket somewhere, but just on that has changed the way we do things. How often do you find yourself just going, just Google it? Do you know, someone asked me the other day, he's only about 17 or 18, we were talking about makeup effects in films, because I used to do that. And I said, it must be great. Now you've got all these instructionals, everything's there. We had to go and find the books. He said, well, how did you know what books to read? Well, you had to read other books. You had to
acquire the knowledge. You had to learn it.
Now, I'm not being a Luddite. I think it's amazing to have this information at our fingertips. I think it's stunning. I watched my 4-year-old son using Google Voice Search, and it's taught him how to spell. It's brilliant, and he can access a whole world of wonders, and it's fantastic. But we have to understand that with these advances come changes.
You're right, mate.
Many positive, some not so much.
And that's why we say in this arena, and I'm talking about me as opposed to you, this is why we say this is always sold with really interesting and really useful benefits. Always at the very beginning. And that's when they suck people in. I mean, it really is staggering to me. I'm going to mention again, Transphantomism is a chapter in David's most recent book, and it's funny you brought up what it has done to it. It has changed the makeup of our brains. Our brain structure has been altered by just browsing, and a number of academics quoted by David in the book actually have come out and said this. One of them is going to be on a radio show really soon.
We do need a caveat before anyone runs away with that. This is something that happens to humans in any environmental change.
Yeah,
I was
but
just
never
this on because it was linked to technology. A diet
never
change,
at this speed though.
But that's true of everything now, isn't it? How fast we're moving with everything. But it is worth pointing out that this is part of being human, is how you adapt and change. But this is the first time I really think it's been triggered in such an amazing way by a technology.
You can have the last word on that. We're going to leave you with this, just to give you an idea of why it is that some of us left the mainstream media to do what we do. Now, I'm not a martyr. I never have been. You'll hear researchers and presenters in this arena constantly talking about how important they are to humanity, and they'll talk to you all the time about what they do for civilization. And all of that fucking bollocks, he said, after saying he wouldn't swear through the entire programme. Nobody is doing anything for humanity. And those of us who left mainstream media to do this, we do it because of this. Have a look at this from the BBC this week. This was yesterday. And I understand, Hayden, that today nearly all the newspapers in this country, including some of the broadsheets, have on their front page this very story, that somebody has left a reality television programme while people are being driven out of Syria, Libya, Yemen, running for their fucking lives. This is what's served up to people as important news. It's the only reason we get out of bed to do programmes like this. Not because we're martyrs, because we deserve any credit for it. We don't. But there's got to be an answer. There's got to be an antidote, and there's got to be an alternative to that nonsense.
Actually, I'll say this was knocked off the front page because Angelina Jolie has left Brad Pitt.
Angelina Jolie.
And I deeply give a shit about that, obviously, because I care terribly for the actions of spoiled millionaires in Hollywood. When we have, like I mentioned before, scientists announced we're pretty much on the way to curing paralysis.
Yeah.
Paralysis!
Yeah.
Getting people out of wheelchairs. There are natural disasters all around the planet, humanitarian disasters. Each 4 corners of the globe, there's something far more... Do you know what? I can't think of anything less newsworthy than 2 rich people getting a divorce or some old bint leaving a baking show. Show!
Old bint.
It's a programme about baking cakes. Why do we... I can't even.
But as you know, my friend, I believe, again, this is all part of the plan to dumb people down. Don't tell them about anything that really matters to them. Don't debate anything that's important to them. Don't educate them. Ironically, educate, entertain and inform and all of that. That's it for this week's show. It's terrific to be back here at BVTB Studios. Delighted that they continue to entertain this programme. Big thanks to Hayden for his help with producing it and for his comments on the show today. Do share it on YouTube, Twitter and on Facebook. Until next week, which will be 30th of September. I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, have a good weekend. Bye for now.